Hello, this is Matthew Armstrong, and welcome to another Transformation Talk. Today I have the great pleasure of speaking again with Elwin Robinson. And if you haven't viewed the first interview that I did with Elwin, I recommend go and watch that first, maybe, and or definitely watch it after this one, and so you get the full package, the complete package that really comes together. Elwin's a nutritionist. He's got a great website. He's a Taoist herbalist. And he's just a lot of people are going to Elwin who are also very much health experts, but maybe just need to get to that next level. And Elwin's got a great deep understanding of the body, the energy system, and how we get more energy into our systems, and also how the mind works as well. So that's something we're going to chat with Elwin about today. So welcome, and thank you again, Elwin, for coming on again.
Thank you, Matthew. Absolute pleasure. Great pleasure to talk with you.
All right, great. So first, I just want to get into the whole thing about energy, because it's something it's paramount, tantamount to our health is our energy. If we don't have energy, then we generally don't do the things that are going to get us healthy because we don't have the energy to do it. And I think one of the things, it's something that I don't really experience so much of not having much energy, but I know from doing whenever I go on a cleanse, a detox, a fast. Sometimes I experience low energy on that, and then I think, wow, this must be what it's like for, some people who have chronic. Is that a seagull?
It is, yeah. I live about 2 minutes from the beach, so sorry. They pretty much can't get away from them.
Yeah. Yeah, so whenever I've been fasting or anything, I've just noticed my energy's been really low, and I think, wow, this is what it must be like for someone who, has the label of ME or chronic fatigue or something like that, and it's not a good place to be. It's a place where unless you're on a cleanse or a fast and you're detoxing, then it's okay. You're going to get through it. But if you're like that all the time and you think, is this going to be the way it is for the rest of my life? Then it's not a very bright vision for the future. So
no, and things like depression
how do we get more
are pretty much
energy into our system? What
going to happen when you have no energy? Because you do lose motivation. You feel like life's not even worth living, and I know that's how I've felt, and I know that's how a lot of the people I've spoken to feel when you don't have energy. Life just becomes really, really difficult at best.
Yeah. So why do some people have no energy? Why is it? Well, it's really, I suppose, an epidemic thing now of low energy. What is it that most of the nation, most of the world has low energy now? What's going on?
Great question, and it's one that isn't asked very often. I would say, like, my experience now with working with many people with this is that the bottom line thing, the thing that I notice with all people who have problems with energy, is that they have very high levels of stress and chronic tension, and that those things really go hand in hand. And it's particularly the type of people who I call hot-hearted people, which is like the Taoist way of looking at their energies, who push themselves really hard, who have really high standards, who really care about the world, ironically, that often end up running out of energy before everyone else, because they see the state of the world, and they see that it's not good, in whatever area they're focused in, maybe the damage we're doing to the environment, or the damage we're doing to each other, or, not to be too bleak, but there's a lot that needs improving in the world, and they see all that, and they become so passionately dedicated to doing their bit to make the world a better place, whether that's global change, or just within their family, or anything in between, that they tend to get really, and because they care so much, they get really stressed, really tense, and the problem is that tension basically blocks the free flow of energy throughout the body. So the more tension and stress you have, the less the energy can flow, and the less the energy can be generated. And so that's where these kind of people, everyone eventually, but especially these kind of people who ironically who really care, who really push themselves hard, run out of energy before everyone else. And then end up in this position. And I'd say most of the people who I've spoken with who have ME or chronic fatigue syndrome or anything, and these are just labels really that doctors give something that they don't understand usually, are in this position of being people who care very deeply, more than most people, and work very hard, and end up being just completely exhausted, completely running out of energy, and running out of reserves of energy. And it's understanding the different types of energy, I guess, which would be the next point, which to me helped me have a breakthrough in understanding the situation.
Because you went through that yourself, right? Of having low energy and all that.
Yes, I would say both my parents had low energy. My mother found it very hard to motivate her to do very much, although she's someone who cared very deeply, and she had cancer a lot of times. My father, on the other hand, pushed himself really hard, and he ended up with chronic fatigue syndrome and ME for many years. I didn't get quite that far. I was just about coping with life, and a couple of times I crashed and couldn't really do anything. I spent 2 years signed off work sick, I think, at one point, so that's quite quite a sign of low energy. But I didn't get to an ME stage where I couldn't even get out of bed, which I know a lot of people have been through. So yeah, it could have been worse, basically. And I feel that I was lucky in that I felt so miserable, believe it or not, and so unwilling to accept my situation of helplessness that I decided to do whatever it takes to resolve it. Whereas I think with some people, by the time they realise it's almost too late for that, and it's not too late ever, but I mean, it's too late to just do whatever it takes on your own. By then, they become so depleted in energy, then they need support just to get through the day, and I'm very grateful that I didn't get to that stage. But yeah, even at my peak and at my prime, I could only really work 4 days a week, and the other 3 days weren't spent going out and socialising and whatnot. They were just spent recovering normally and doing not very much. Right. Throughout my childhood, I never had much energy. Even though I ate really healthily until I was age 6, no junk food, no bad food of any kind. I remember I used to struggle, and then I discovered sweets. Sugary foods, and that was like a constant way of chasing energy. Every time energy gets low, more sugar, more sugar, more sugar. And then when I was a teenager, I discovered stimulants, and then that was a way of getting some energy. Having a coffee or a cigarette or something every half hour, every hour, just to try and boost the energy again. Until the point in my mid-20s where the toxicity of all these things and the negative consequences were so bad that I realised I couldn't carry on that way, that it was ultimately going to destroy me very quickly.
Yeah. So things like nutritionally, stimulants, things like that, they do have a short-term benefit maybe, but long-term they're not going to do too much good. Is that right?
Well, this is the thing that I learned about stimulants later, which is so fascinating to me, Matthew, was I always had this idea that, like, say something like a coffee, you take it, it gives you some energy, and then also in some nebulous way, which I didn't quite understand, it was also bad for you. But I didn't really get that. Then I came across this distinction from Anthony Robbins, who, I know that we're both a big fan of. And he basically explained that what any stimulant is the reason that it works is because it's basically a poison. It poisons you, and then that stimulates your body to deal with the poison. So the reason you suddenly get that rush of clarity and energy and purpose is because your adrenal glands have been stimulated. And the adrenal glands have been stimulated basically because you've just poisoned yourself, and it's gone into an alarm state. It's like, what is that? It's because you just poisoned yourself. So, people think, oh, well, yeah, these things give me energy, but they're bad for me. No, they don't. What they do is they poison you, and then your body taps into your reserves of energy just to deal with being poisoned. And in the meantime, you can use those reserves to also, cope with the next hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long the stimulant lasts you, until the next time that you crash. So just this understanding, which is really crucial, of no stimulant gives you energy. All it does is it forces your body to dip into your reserves of energy, which makes you feel good for a little period of time, and then leaves you even lower than before. And this was the cycle that I was caught in, just hopelessly trapped, And for myself, the idea of always being dependent on some kind of drug, which is basically what they are, just to get through the day, was obnoxious. I hated it, but I just didn't know that there were any other alternatives. So yeah, I'd say that's an important distinction to make, to realise that no drug, no stimulant ever gives you energy. All it does is it drains you of what you're probably already quite low of, which is reserves of energy.
Okay, very, very good, very good. Would that also still be the case for like raw cacao, which I know is pretty huge now in the health movement, especially the raw food movement? Is raw cacao is touted as like a top superfood. Is it not also a stimulant?
Yeah, most definitely.
Right.
It's a little bit more, because it's got quite a few benefits to it as well. So it's certainly better than a cup of coffee for most people. Although I have known some people who really react very badly to raw chocolate and yet can cope with coffee. So each person is unique, but generally speaking, it's better than coffee because it is a stimulant. But on the other hand, it's giving you some nutrients as well.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, all these things are relative. Some people thrive even when they're, because some people say, "Oh, I eat raw chocolate all day, I feel great," and it's like, yeah, but some people are alcoholics. They just drink whiskey and they don't even eat, and they still carry on for 10 or 20 years. So
Yeah.
just because you do okay with something or you do well with something doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for everyone. I think even
Yeah.
David Wolf, who of course, along with Shazzy, who's a good friend of mine, pioneered the whole thing. I heard him recently, like in the last year, in an interview, say that it's not a good idea for anyone with adrenal issues. But then, if you look at the statistics, around 90% of people have adrenal issues. So
Okay.
someone who's really, really healthy, like David Wolf, I'm sure is, after all these years of cleansing and fasting and trying every health product under the sun, I'm sure it's absolutely fine for you. Your body takes that little bit of poison, no big deal, it deals with it, and he can just get on with his day. And people who it agrees with, wonderful. But for most of us, especially anyone who has low energy, especially anyone who has stress and chronic tension, it's not going to be a great idea. The other thing that's interesting about chocolate is that as well as being an adrenal stimulant, it's also a heart stimulant or a cardiac stimulant, what's known as a vasodilator. So the reason why it can feel so good to people is because it basically, again, the promoters of chocolate say, it opens up the heart. It stimulates the heart. And if your heart is quite closed and quite cold and quite withdrawn, then it can almost be worth it to experience that heart-opening thing and to experience that connection with the world again. Even if you are stimulating your adrenal glands a little bit, it's good for your soul and your reason for being alive. But the other side of the coin is that for some people, their heart, the issue that they have with their heart isn't that it's too closed; it's that it's too easily stimulated, and that's especially the kind of people who, ironically, I find in the raw food world. Those people who tend to have energy issues. So if that's the case, the people who push themselves really hard, the people who really care, the people whose hearts are really strong and overstimulated of anything, people who tend to get frustrated easily, people who tend to get impatient, people who tend to have really high standards, perfectionists, people who get really disappointed if they don't reach those standards, all that kind of thing, those kind of people. So for those kind of people, to stimulate the heart even more just makes things worse. So that's the other factor of raw chocolate.
Okay. So adrenal fatigue is something that I suppose with maybe 80-90% of the population, if you ask them on the street, do they experience low energy? Most people would say yes, right?
Yeah.
And you were just saying there that up to maybe 90% of the population of people have adrenal fatigue of some sort. So is that what it comes down to? Is that what low energy really comes down to? Is it our adrenals? Is that physically what it is?
Well, I really like the Taoist, way of modelling this, and what they say is that there's 3 types of energy. Now, I talk a lot about this in my other works, so I won't, go on and on about it here, Matthew. But I'll just sum up very quickly. The first one is called Shen, and that's kind of spirit energy, and that relates to motivation. I think we're going to talk about that afterwards, so I'll leave that one. But the 2 which are particularly relevant are Qi and Jing, and I translate those as everyday energy and reserve energy. So it's going to be an issue with one of those 2 basically, and usually a combination of the 2. Normally what happens, so shall I explain those, or do you think your viewers are kind of aware of those already, Qi and Jing? Shall I explain them a bit?
No, yeah, definitely. If just give a minute or so on each, or 2 or whatever. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So Qi is the kind of energy that most of us are aware of, and this is what in Western science would be referred to as ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So this is cellular energy. So this is literally the energy that you get from the air you breathe and the nutrients that you take in. So this is the energy that you should use to get through the day, right? You breathe well, you eat well, and you have the energy and you get through the day. And assuming that there's no major problems with your body's ability to make ATP or any of the other issues that could come up, like blood sugar imbalance, which often halts the ATP production to some degree. Sorry, it's always going to go to some degree, otherwise you're going to be dead. But the thing that can slow it down from working properly. There's a variety of reasons why a person could not be producing enough chi. But it's basically going to boil down to either the breathing, which means that they're not breathing properly, or they're not breathing good quality air, or it's going to be down to digestion, and it's going to be either you're not digesting enough of the right nutrients, or maybe you just can't digest well. So either you're not taking the right thing in, or you're not able to process the thing that you're taking in. So I'd say, just to really simplify it, that's what it boils down to. Now, if for whatever reason, if any of those 4 issues happen, then you need to start dipping into your reserve energy. Or if you push yourself harder than your everyday energy is able to keep up with, then you need to dip into your reserve energy. Or if you've been severely traumatized, like a lot of people have in this day and age, and you haven't really been able to get over it, and you've locked that in your body, then and then the energy isn't able to flow freely, and the ATP again isn't enough, so then you have to dip into your reserve energy. Or you're just in the habit of dipping into your reserves because you're taking stimulants and drugs, or because you're kind of in the habit of feeling fearful about things, which leads us on to reserve energy. So reserve energy has a few different names in Western medicine. We could definitely call it adrenal energy. That's the most common way that we translate it. But you could also call it sexual energy. You could call it a magnetic energy, that thing that makes you magnetic. And you could call it mind energy or mental energy. So all of these things relate to reserve energy. And so whereas the everyday energy relates to the lungs and the digestive system, your reserve energy relates to your kidneys and adrenals. The adrenals just perch on top of the kidneys. Kidneys relate to endurance. Adrenals relate more to immediate action. They relate to the bladder as well. They relate to the whole brain and central nervous system, the bones and joints and tendons as well. So when people are low in reserve energy, they tend to have problems in at least one of those areas. So maybe they've got any number of reproductive issues, or they're having problems with memory, clarity, focus, those kind of brain, central nervous system issues, or they're having problems with endurance, which would be kidney issues, or they're having problems with being fearful or anxious all the time, which is adrenal gland issues. And those things tend to always come together. So when we have to dip into our reserves, we start to deplete that energy, and it might show up in different ways for different people. Some people, their endurance is great, but they become infertile, or some people, their sex drive is great, but they can't remember what they did a few minutes ago. So it tends to come from different places. But yeah, that's the other thing, is our reserve energy starts to get depleted, and those areas then tend to suffer.
Okay. Is there ways and methods to repair this, especially the adrenals? If we do suffer from adrenal fatigue, is there a way to repair this and to get the adrenals functioning properly again without needing stimulants, etc., and all the other areas as well that you're talking about, to get more of that everyday chi energy and also the reserve jing energy?
Absolutely, yes. So the everyday energy one is a little bit easier to describe normally. Basically, a person needs to sort out their digestion, balance their blood sugar, and then start to take in decent quality foods, decent quality nutrients. So that's basically it for the digestive element. They also need to learn to breathe better. So breathe from the belly, breathe more fully and generally deeply, rather than shallow in a tense kind of way from the chest. And breathe better quality air. And I realise if you live in a big smoggy city, then you just have to do the best you can, right? And then in terms of the reserve energy is a little bit more complex, and that's why I created a whole program dedicated to it. It's more complex partly because when you run out of even reserves, it's really hard to get yourself to do anything, which is the biggest challenge of all. And we'll talk a little bit about motivation. But the other issue is it's actually not that easy. And for my own healing, I had to go to Eastern medicine to really understand what to do about it. Like the Western approach, even the alternative Western approach, really seemed to have no idea about this. And I think that's why the Eastern approach is becoming more and more well known. In the West, we tend to focus more on the liver, like the health and detoxification, even in the alternative world. In the East, they focus more on the kidneys as the root of the body's energy, as that's the primary thing to really deal with. I'll just boil it down very, very kind of simply, though, in a scientific way, and I'll refer people to my Easy Exhaustion Cure to get like a very, very detailed program which talks you through exactly what to do step by step. Basically, when you're low in reserve energy, when you experience stress, so any kind of adrenal activity, your body tends to excrete certain things. And the main thing that excretes is water and minerals. So, and it starts to create more and more acidity. So when you have all those issues going on, when you're dehydrated, when you're demineralized, and when your body's more acidic than it should be, then a whole host of other problems are going to show up. Pretty much anything, from having a bacterial infection, to having an autoimmune situation, to having low energy, to having fogginess, to being overweight. Pretty much any health issue can show up, because once you're devitalized on that basic level, then everything else can go wrong. Now, rehydrating, unfortunately, isn't as simple in that situation as just drinking water.
Right.
We need to drink the right kind of water in the right kind of quantities to replenish it. We also need to take in the minerals, especially the electrolyte minerals, which help the body to actually take in the water on a cellular level, because it's really a cellular level that you become dehydrated, and that's when your reserves of energy go down. We also need to look at essential fats, because that's where the body actually stores this reserve energy in every cell, is basically in the fats. So it conducts it via water, and it stores it via fat and minerals. So we need to look at getting all that back in. And we need to look at resolving the whole situation of acidity without kind of making things worse. And what I mean by that is when you're drinking vast amounts of alkaline water, as an example, and not much else, you're basically helping to buffer the acidity, so neutralize the acidity, to stop yourself from feeling terrible. But you're also putting more and more strain on the body's organ systems, especially kidneys, and that very, very alkaline water doesn't really help your body to hydrate. So it's kind of resolving one problem whilst creating another one. So basically, the kind of bottom line to it is rehydrate yourself, remineralize yourself, and then restore an acid-alkaline balance, but in a way that doesn't cause more problems. And a lot of that, to me, relates to this issue of tension and breathing again. You need to resolve why you're not breathing properly in the first place, which is normally the stress, anxiety, chronic tension. Then when you breathe properly, your body's not only able to take in all the energy it needs through getting the chi, the everyday energy going in, but it's also able to excrete the acidity which you've got building up. Because about 70% of our detoxification actually happens through our lungs.
Lungs, yeah.
Most people still aren't aware of that. And most of that stuff that's excreted is acidity. So really a matter of learning how to breathe properly to get that acidity back out again, as well as replenishing all the things which have run out, and then strengthening the organs which relate to that, which, like I said, is the kidneys, And I particularly like to use herbs for that particular purpose, to strengthen the kidneys again. And the blend that I came up with for that is called Rejuvenate, which is very much focused on getting your reserves of energy back up again. So in a nutshell, that's basically how I would describe the process. So it's replacing, it's getting the acidity out rather than just adding more and more alkaline stuff. It's strengthening the organ systems that relate to this low energy, which is particularly the kidney organ system. And then it's getting those nutrients back in, most specifically water and the electrolyte minerals, and a few other minerals like zinc or manganese that tend to be really, really depleted when a person's reserves are depleted.
Okay, so do we basically know if we are suffering from adrenal fatigue, kidney problems, if we have low energy? Is that pretty much the signal?
Yes, although I'd say, or if you have to have stress to have energy. So, I mean, okay, so if you're like consistently exhausted, if it's not just up and down, but if you're just down, then yeah, adrenal exhaustion has definitely taken place. But even if you're sometimes all right, sometimes not, often look at when you're all right and look at, do I have to create stress just to get through the next minute, hour, day, whatever it might be? Because it's not just the stress of stimulants. This is the interesting thing. So many people are kind of addicted to drama, or they're addicted to fear or anxiety, and everyone is addicted to emotional states. You can be addicted to joy and whole love as well, but emotional states are the most powerfully addictive things that we have, whatever those emotional states might be. And I'd say the warning sign that you're near complete adrenal exhaustion is you feel like you have to have stress just to get through the day, or you have to have drama just to get through the day, or just to get to the next 2 hours. So if you're constantly feeling stressed by things, you're constantly feeling anxious about things, or you're worrying about things, or you notice that you're constantly attracting drama into your life, I'd say that's an early warning sign that basically you need to squeeze a little bit more energy out of your reserves just to get through the day. And then I'd look at very quickly resolving the whole issue, because at some point, if you carry on that way, that's when you'll completely collapse. Also, if you have blood sugar imbalances, that's a classic sign that there is also a stress situation going on, because those blood sugar imbalances normally come either through stress or through the stress of stimulant abuse. So if you crave sweet foods, or if you crave stimulants, or if you crave stress and drama, part of the reason for that is because every time you have any of those things, you get a blood sugar boost. Your blood sugar goes up, and then that's going to follow with a blood sugar crash. So those, I'd say, are some of the most obvious warning signs.
Yeah. Okay. And we're not going to go too much into really nutrition on this call, because we did a lot of nutrition on the last chat we had.
Sure.
But one question I wanted to ask you, because it is I suppose a little bit of controversy around it, a little bit of debate, is there's one school of thought that says that our cells run on glucose, and then there's another school of thought that says that our cells run on electrons, and two are, I suppose, completely opposing. And I know that you have looked into both, and I'd just be interested to find out your understanding on that.
Well, to me, whenever I hear two diametrically opposite points of view, I'm always looking for the synthesis, and I'd say the simple answer to this is it can do both. It's fairly obvious that the cells can run without glucose, I would say, because of the documented evidence that people have gone months and months without eating anything. So even all the stores of glucose in the muscles and in the liver isn't going to last for that long. So that indicates that we must have another mechanism within us whereby we can use for energy, and I'd say electrons are it. But on the other hand, electrolytes are it. But on the other hand, to say that people don't run their energy on glucose, that glucose isn't part of ATP production, isn't true either. So I'd say it's simply a matter of both.
Yeah. Okay. So if we move on to the third source of energy now.
Yes.
Yes. To talk about that, and that's moving more into, I suppose, the mind and behavioral psychology as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. So the third one is called Shen. And that's often translated as spirit, but I like to make it a little bit more concrete. So I often translate it as the energy of integrity, or the energy of perspective, or the energy of harmony. Because it's when that level of energy is low in us, we find it very difficult to do what we say we're going to do. So that's the integrity aspect. We also find it very difficult to see things in context. We tend to feel really boxed into this really narrow worldview, and the kind of thing where the wise man sort of understands that anything that isn't a big deal 10 years from now probably isn't that big a deal now, that kind of thing. That's the kind of perspective that you have if you have high levels of Shen energy. If not, then if your Shen energy is very low, then every single little thing seems like an incredibly big deal at the time, and you get totally caught up in it. And then the issue of harmony as well. If your Shen energy is low, you tend to be pulled in all kinds of directions, and this is almost our natural state of being, because we don't just have a brain, we have all these different organs, and they all have their own agendas, so the adrenal glands like excitement, and the liver likes stability, and the stomach likes food, and the sexual organs like sex, and and this becomes very and then the brain likes to learn, and this becomes, it sounds like theory, but this becomes very pertinent in an everyday sense. It's like, well, what am I going to do this evening? Am I going to chase or have a sexual interaction, or am I going to listen to my heart and have a loving interaction? Hopefully the two are mixed, but or am I going to listen to my head and spend the night doing research? Or am I going to listen to my stomach and spend the night gorging myself on food? Or so the choices you make kind of depend. And with Shen, you get this sense of harmony, and it's almost like having like a strong leader come in who everyone listens to and follows, not because they dominate by fear, but out of respect, because they have that sense of authority. And basically, kind of the question that Shen asks is not just in a theoretical sense, but in every moment, does, what would serve my ultimate purposes, and of course with that, first of all, comes the clarity of what what your ultimate purposes are, but assuming you have
Mm-hmm.
some degree of clarity, even if it's not in your head, even if you just have a feeling about why you're alive and what it is that you're here on this planet to do, then what Shen will ask is, does this serve my purposes now? And that doesn't mean that any pleasure needs to be ignored. Maybe it does serve your purposes to have sex all night, or to eat massive amounts of food all night, or to research all night, or whatever the particular thing that you're focused on. So it's not even that you can't sometimes have excess, or it certainly doesn't mean you can't enjoy yourself. You can absolutely enjoy yourself, but it's just like this question: does it serve my ultimate purposes? So that ultimately it's a harmonious thing. Because the worst thing about a lack of Shen, and the reason why you could say it's the root cause of all health problems, is because when we don't have a harmony between all the different facets of ourselves, whether you could call it the organs in our body, or whether you call it the different personalities that we have inside us, or however you want to call it, the different agendas that we have, if you don't have harmony, then instead you have internal conflict. You have, I should do this, but I actually want to do this, but really I need to do this, and there's all these different things, and then we're pulled in different directions, and we're fighting, and whatever we do, we're not happy, because there's some part of us that's not satisfied and doesn't feel like it's being listened to and appeased, and we're just constantly, in this guilt and struggle and warfare. And this is more than anything a drain of energy. Like I said, chronic tension and stress is ultimately the cause of all this ill health problem. So in a way, this issue of Shen, or spirit, or integrity, or perspective, whatever you want to call it, is actually at the root of it all. Because if we have this level of harmony about understanding, and this relates to what I call is the first step to really understanding motivation, and how to motivate yourself. So most people try and take action to whatever it is that they want to do to, resolve their health issues, or get to the next level of health, or whatever it might be, without having clarity first about what the hell they're doing. And if you were doing this in any other area of life, it would seem kind of silly, like if you were wanting to build a house, you wouldn't just say, right, give me a brick. You understand there's like a process that you have to go through first. And the process is really very simple. You need to get a really good level of clarity of exactly where you're at first. So with this health thing, maybe as a result of listening to these interviews, you might be like, oh, I recognize that I'm not breathing well, and that's why I'm low on energy. Or it might be, oh yeah, I'm up and down all over the place. Maybe I need to cut out sugar and stimulants. Or, God, yeah, I feel really depleted. I have brain fog and my sex drive is lower, so that sounds like the kidneys, or whatever. It's kind of working out what's going on, and working out exactly where you're at, working out what you need to prioritize. That's like the first thing, getting clarity about exactly where you are. Then the next thing is getting clarity about exactly where you want to go. And in fact, when I do a consultation with people, I do this the other way around. The first question I normally ask them, which is in itself a bit of a pattern break, is, what are your goals? What would you like to achieve? What is this vision of who you want to be as a result of working with me? Most people are like just waiting to reel off, all the problems they've got. And of course, I want to hear all the problems they've got in detail, because I want to understand where they're at. But just starting off with a compelling vision about where you really want to go. And this is really crucial for me if I'm working with someone, because there's no point me telling someone a list of everything they need to do to lose weight when all they want to do is have more energy or better skin. So it's really important to understand what's important to them. But even if you're just working on yourself, it's really important for you to have an idea of what it is that you ultimately want to achieve. And then lastly, from where you are to where you're going, you need a strategy, step by step, chunk by chunk, so it's not overwhelming, to help you to get there. Now, I'm saying all this, and it sounds totally obvious and self-evident, And if you were building a house, first of all, you'd have to assess the area. Is the land going to sink? Do I have planning permission? All this kind of thing. And then you'd want to actually draw a framework of exactly how you want it to be. Where you get an architect to do that. This is what I want my house to look like at the end. And then you work out a plan, right? I'm going to start off by laying the foundations, and then the ground floor, and then and I need to get scaffolding and I've never built a house, so I have no idea really, I'm just guessing, but you need to have a very step-by-step plan of exactly how you're going to do it. And yet this sounds totally obvious. I'm sure everyone watching this is like, yeah, totally obvious, Elwin. But almost no one does this when it comes to improving their life or improving their health. They just kind of muddle in there, take someone else's strategy which probably wasn't appropriate for them, maybe isn't even got their goals in mind, and just have a go with that, or just see what happens. I'll just order this product and hope I get better, or this marketing campaign sounds good, so I'll just order this thing, hope it solves all my problems. Generally, it doesn't work that way. If you're lucky, then it can do. Anything's possible. But generally, you need to have real clarity about where you're at, a compelling enough vision. I know Anthony Robbins talks about this. So, if you're like, I know my friend Philip McCluskey, for instance, who lost over 200 pounds in weight over 2 years because he was an incredibly big guy, down from like 400 to 190. If he'd have said to himself, I just want to lose 20 pounds, I want to go from 400 pounds to 380, as much as that may have been more realistic, that wouldn't have been compelling for him. Why is he going to go through all that struggle and all that hassle and all that work just to end up slightly less obese? No offense, Phil, one of my best friends. It's not going to happen, right? But the compelling vision to him of being like thin and fit and healthy and having energy and all that kind of thing, that was enough for him to do it. So really having a vision that's, yes, I'm going to do whatever it takes to achieve that because it's so awesome, right? Yes. And then having a step-by-step plan of getting there. Now, when I say step-by-step plan, just like we're building a house, sometimes, there's a factor which you hadn't considered, and you have to change your step-by-step plan. You have to be able to be flexible and adapt it as new things that you hadn't realised before come up, absolutely. But you still need that plan to adapt. You can't just be freestyle, I'll just wait and see what happens, unless you're, again, incredibly lucky, anything's possible. You're probably not going to get there either. So the first thing is getting clarity. Now, if you have that level of clarity, getting yourself to do whatever is necessary is pretty easy. If you have a compelling enough vision, if you really understand where you're at, and I'd say over 90% of the people I speak to, Matthew, when they have problems motivating themselves, this is basically it. They don't know themselves. They don't understand what they really value. They don't understand how they really see themselves, what they identify with. They don't understand what they prioritize. They don't understand what's really important to them. And I know that I was in that position, up until 2-3 years ago, and the only reason that I've got to where I am now is to really make a lot of headway with this. Now, especially if you're stressed, especially if you're overwhelmed, especially if your health is suffering and you're low on energy, you feel like you can't even get through the day and do what you need to survive, let alone create a grand plan about why you're here and like to know thyself, all that kind of thing. But actually, that's the most important thing to do of all, is to get some real clarity about who you are as a person, what's really important for you. Just as a quick example for this, Matthew, when I work with a lot of people, I get, especially people who struggle with motivation, I get them to do like their values and to really understand what's most important to them, and I get them to do it in a very particular way. And you would be amazed, you would be absolutely amazed how many people come to me wanting to resolve their health and energy, and then when I say, okay, we're going to do something different, and then we do this values exercise, health and energy isn't even on the list.
Yeah, it's way down there.
Way down. It's not even on there. A lot of the time, it's not like even that it's deprioritized. When I actually ask them to access their subconscious, it doesn't even come up, and that's because those values are out of date. Maybe they set them when they were 10 years old or 20 or whatever, when health and energy wasn't a priority because they felt immortal and like their energy was boundless, and they're still operating from that place as if health isn't an issue, and then surprised that now health is an issue. So that's the first thing, is to really get clarity. Then the next step is to take consistent action. And I'm a firm believer that habits are the bedrock of any real change, any transformation, any level of mastery. Not just doing things occasionally, not a weekend retreat, not going to the gym once, but going to the gym every day. It's better to go to the gym 10 minutes, 3, 4, 5 days a week, whatever you can handle, than it is to go for 2 hours once and then forget about it again for 2 weeks. So it's that thing, consistent habits done step by step, day after day. And I realize I'm taking a long time, so I'll just get to the third step, which I think is also really important, and that is enthusiasm or inspiration or feeling really good. Because if you really want to get somewhere, then you can have exact clarity about exactly where you want to go, where you're at, how to get there, and you can be completely committed to taking consistent action. But if you're doing it in this miserable way, if it feels like a chore, if it feels like a job, if it feels like something that you'd rather not be doing, at some point you will give up. So what we need to understand is that enthusiasm for what you're doing isn't just something that comes to you, although of course it can do. It's something that you really have to generate within yourself. Keep yourself enthusiastic. And a lot of that is, related to listening or watching maybe things like this that inspire you, that make you, this is what this is all about. And this membership site you're doing, is an example of that. Once a week, people are going to get inspiration, right? At least once a week, they're going to get inspiration to keep on what they're doing. They're also surrounding yourself with a peer group of other people who are also doing something similar. Again, because we can inspire each other, like you and I do, Matthew. If one of us is going to flag, then the other one will lift them back up again. So really understanding that enthusiasm and feeling good about what you're doing is your responsibility, rather than, oh, well, I feel bad about this today, so I'm just going to have a day off and not bother to drink water or whatever it is that I need to do to be healthy because I'm just feeling bad. It's like, no, you've got to keep yourself feeling good. And more importantly, within your strategy, going back to the first step, you need to set up things which make sure that you keep feeling good about what you're doing. And I'd say that's basically it. That's the 3-step strategy. If you have absolute clarity, if you take consistent action, and then you keep your level of enthusiasm up, getting to where you want to go is inevitable. And that's what we want it to be. We don't want it to be achievement. We don't want it to be an aspiration. We don't want it to be, something that I'm aiming for, really. We want to set it up so getting to where we want to go is just inevitable. Like, there's no chance that it won't happen. Because it's only when something feels inevitable that usually we actually get there. I kind of like the law of attraction thing about, whatever you believe, you'll manifest. But I think a lot deeper than belief is expectation.
Yeah.
So whatever we really expect to happen, that's normally what we have happen to us. We may believe that, we're going to have wonderful things happen, but if we really expect that in the end of the day, it's all going to go wrong, then in the end of the day, it is all going to go wrong. So really change our expectation. And this happens, if you really follow these steps. And I'm sure, Matthew, if you think about it, you'll realise that you implemented these own steps in your life for your own progress. And I've looked at people and I've modelled them, and everyone who really gets to a level of mastery, who really gets to a level of getting somewhere in any area of their life, these are basically the steps they follow. They get clarity, they take consistent action, and they keep their enthusiasm up.
Yeah, and it's something that I come across a lot. And I'm sure you do it as well. Is many people don't actually want to get well, don't want to get healthy, because there's other benefits. There's secondary benefits from not getting healthy. So then there's massive resistance, and that can also contribute to them knowing what to do but still not doing what they know, is because there's some hidden benefit, an unconscious benefit that they have that's not compelling them to even if they have the clarity on their vision, to actually take the action on it. Do you come across that, and how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. I'd say a lot of the time as well, it's just because they prioritize something else. So, when it actually comes to it, say if your family invites you out for dinner and it's unhealthy and it's going to make you feel bad, but you prioritize being social, or you prioritize pleasing other people or whatever. So sometimes it can even just be as simple as that. But to really address your question on a really root level, I totally agree with you. And the tricky thing, kind of, again, what I've boiled it down to, I like boiling these things down to the ultimate root. What I've really boiled it down to is that people identify very deeply with their level of tension.
Right.
So, as I said, chronic tension or stress, whatever you want to call it, is pretty much the root of all health problems. And once someone's tried all the kind of usual stuff and they come to me and I basically explain that to them, most people accept that as a reality. They've done everything that they're supposed to help to make you be healthy, and it still hasn't done it. But the one thing that they haven't done is reduce their tension levels. So that's really the thing that's at the root of it. Now, the tricky thing is that we fight and we struggle really hard to conform to our identity of ourselves, which is kind of what the ego does. In fact, the ego, like our mind, will happily destroy the host, which is our body, rather than change, usually, or rather than accept like a different type of identity. Now, of course, we could quite easily accept I'm healthy, I'm vital, I'm full of energy. That's a level of identity that most of us would be happy to embrace. But the thing that we're really challenged by is I'm someone who's relaxed, because we identify so deeply with that tension. And unfortunately, being truly relaxed, which isn't the same as being, doing nothing, slumping. Often the most relaxed people are the most energetic people, and the most tense people are the ones who move the least, right? So we're not talking about being static, but the people who are the most relaxed are generally the most healthy. And this flies in the face of a lot of kind of health dogma out there, which you have to be really obsessive compulsive about everything that you do and everything that you eat and all the rest of it, which just generates more tension. So it just makes things worse. So ultimately it's this issue of tension. But what I found is that our tension is really deeply rooted at an identity level. And in fact, we identify with our level of tension more than pretty much anything else. Because often this high level of tension is actually formed when our brains were not even able to cognisize what was going on around us, and certainly weren't able to label things. So before you had the label of, I'm Matthew, or I'm a son, or I'm a father, or I'm a man, or I'm a good man, or I'm a bad man, or anything like that. The most basic level of identification is the level of tension that you felt, and then everything else builds up around that. So when you get a person to do things which really work to increase their health, and this could be a juice fast, or it could be some breathing exercises, or whatever the hell it is,
Yeah.
if it's something that really works, it's going to work by reducing the tension levels. That's not to say that the nutrition things aren't relevant, because of course if you have no vitamin C in your body, and your body needs vitamin C, that's going to make your body tense, right? So it's not to say that any of the supplements or any of the nutritional things and all the rest of it aren't relevant. They definitely are. But ultimately, anything that works by reducing the tension level. Now, the problem is when people start to genuinely reduce their tension level, they kind of feel like they're dying. Because their level, they identify so deeply with that tension that when that tension starts to reduce, they don't know who they are anymore. And to most people, knowing who you are and feeling secure in who you are is more important than getting whatever it is that you think you want, whether it's happiness or health or money or whatever it is that you think is your priority. Really, the number one priority normally is to conform with your identity on a really deep level. So I'd say that's the big challenge with it. It's not that people, from my kind of framework or from my context, it's not that people don't want to be well. It's that they are terrified of becoming the person who is well, because it threatens them on such a deep identity level. And that's where really you need to guide people through it step by step, and reassure them and make them understand this whole process. And it's a little bit, you can use all the classic kind of almost cheesy platitudes, like the caterpillar is terrified of becoming the butterfly, that kind of thing. And that's pretty much where it's at. To go from a person who's chronically stressed and tense to a person who's healthy is not just a change, it's a transformation. So real health comes as a result of that transformation, and that level of transformation, it is scary. And if you're already very, very high in anxiety and stress, then another deep level fear, or in fact the ultimate deep level fear being realized, is scary. So I'd say it's really, that's where often leverage becomes the thing. So when you're feeling that bad, when basically being you becomes so intolerable you can't stand it anymore, which I know that's exactly where I was at, then transformation feels like it's worthwhile. In fact, it feels like the only choice, and that's where you commit and you're willing to do whatever it takes, and you're willing to take whatever step is necessary. And before you get to that point, if you're basically like, my energy's suffering or whatever, but I'm kind of comfortable, I'm kind of all right, it's almost impossible to make that deep level change which will make you truly healthy and energetic and vital. And the only thing you can really do is to, again, and this relates back to the clarity, become really, really aware of just how bad your situation is. So get rid of all the layers of, placating yourself, which you built up about, oh, it's all right, and I suppose I have this, and it's not too bad, and all that kind of thing, and just admit to yourself, actually, this situation is pretty terrible, and then create this compelling future about how awesome it's going to be, and like, that is going to be really awesome. And if you're at this point where you've had that level of clarity, and you're like, right, so my situation is horrible, and the future that I'm looking at creating is amazing, then doing this thing which threatens you at an identity level will feel worthwhile. But if you're just like, no, I'm alright, but I want to get a little bit better, then sure, you can get a little bit better. But if the root cause of your ill health is this chronic tension, then you're probably not going to get very far for very long. Something else will just show up in its place.
Yeah, I think one of the points that you brought up there is knowing exactly where you are and being completely honest with yourself of that's where you are, and that this is a place where positive thinking can fall down, and where a lot of people are going, no, I'm an optimist, I'm a positive thinker, things aren't too bad, I'll just focus on the good. But sometimes we need to actually just stop and say, okay, this is what's not working, this is what I'm not going to stand for anymore. These are the demons in my life. I'm gonna and use that as the pain of that as the leverage, as you say, to catapult us forward into our vision. Makes total sense, and is great stuff you're sharing there. And with the the tension that you're talking about, it being like the root of the problems of the health issue and everything is that level of tension. I completely resonate with that as well, especially through doing martial arts, and the grandmaster of the martial art that I do. One of the things that he, I suppose, tries to imprint on us the most is to relax.
Mm.
And it's something that he just constantly says. It's just relax. He'll walk past, he'll touch you and say, relax, relax. And just to be relaxed in your movement, relaxed in everything you do. And then something that he said to me personally while putting me through a test was, don't take yourself so seriously. Be less serious. Be more lighthearted, and that as well lets go of the tension. So that was the biggest lessons that I received from him, was just to relax and to be lighthearted, and that's on a deep level, that's what gives us our health. And that's why I suppose things like tai chi, things like meditation are so good for our health, is because we're being relaxed, we're letting go of that tension, right?
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Yeah. So that's wonderful. Maybe we can just get a brief of each area. How, just a couple of things, how we can bring more chi energy into our bodies, into ourselves, and into our lives, and then maybe a couple of things we can do immediately to bring more of the Jing, and then a couple of things we can do to bring more of the Shen, just to round up everything.
Great. Okay. Absolutely. So I'd say the most important thing for chi, and the thing that's probably ignored more than the nutrition issue, which I'm sure many other of your guests have covered with, is really this thing about breathing. So this thing about breathing well, and on a very, very basic level, so just something to start off with, is have a look and try and learn to breathe from your belly. And what that basically means is you sit up with your spine kind of straight, or you stand up with your spine straight. Try and do it with your spine straight whenever you do this practice, although to be honest, you can do it any time. And just when you breathe in, allow your belly to go out. It should fill up like a balloon. So you can put both your hands on your belly, and just when you breathe in, just feel it pushing out onto your hands. And then when you breathe out, just feel your hands pushing in and pushing the breath back in. That's just such an incredibly simple practice. And without getting any more complex, just get used to that. And whenever you're stressed, whenever you're tense, whenever you feel overwhelmed, just go back to that. Just take a deep breath into the belly, so your belly goes out. Take a deep breath in and slow breath out, so your belly goes in. And then you'll find that everything isn't as bad as it was a moment ago. So really simple. And to take that to the next level, when you do that, try and become present. Like, try and focus on your actual environment rather than what's going on in your head. So just soak up whatever's around you. So just take a deep breath in, soak up whatever's around you. Fill yourself with the sights and sounds and smells and tastes of where you're around. Breathe out. Really simple, really profound. And then look at the quality of air you're breathing. That's number 2. If you're sitting all day in a really stuffy room, you have to understand. So if 70% of your excretion roughly happens for your lungs, and around 2% goes for your large intestine, if you're in a room all day without any ventilation, you are basically swimming in around 35 times as much waste as you would normally leaving the toilet in an average day.
Wow.
That's that's a good thing to be aware of. Now, of course, it is a different type of waste, yeah, but it's still waste. So being in a stuffy room with no ventilation is death to your body's energy. And it's one of the most simple things I do. If I'm face to face with a client and they're like, well, I'm low in energy, like, let's go outside. Always makes a difference. Let's open a window. In fact, I'm never in a room where a window isn't open unless I don't realise. And then my clarity starts to go down a bit, and my energy starts to go down. I'm like, what's going on here? Oh, no ventilation. So most basic. Breathe a little bit better. Get some good quality air in, or ideally go out and get some good quality air. Most important thing of all for chi. In fact, the word chi and breath in Chinese are the same thing. They're the same character. They see it as identical. So really look at breathing. For your Jing, the most important thing I would say is hydration. Get whatever type of water that you're into. I'm not keen on alkaline water. I'm not keen on tap water. Blah blah blah. But everyone's got a different opinion about this. But whatever it is, have more of it. I'd say especially start the day with having like at least a litre of water, it's about a quart of water, before you have anything else. Because if you've been asleep, however long it's been, 6, 8, 10 hours, however long you sleep for, you're going to be dehydrated because you haven't drunk all night. And also your body's been cleansing all night, so you need to flush all those toxins through. So always start the day with a litre of water, at least. If you want to have 2, great, go for it. And make sure you have at least another litre throughout the day. But don't see 2 litres like the classic 8 cups as something to aim for. See that as an absolute bare minimum. Absolute minimum. And that's only if you're not sweating, you're not exerting yourself, you're not stressed, you're not cleansing, then 2 litres is a minimum. Any of those other factors come in, you need more again. More water, you feel better. It's really as simple as that. And then the other thing would be, God, so many to choose from. I'd say, look at something to strengthen your kidneys. Look at getting some kind of herbal blend, like Rejuvenate, or anything that contains Jing tonic herbs, especially Yin Jing tonic herbs, like my Rejuvenate. If you're in some country where you can't get my Rejuvenate, then by all means, just have a look at my website, lionheartherbs.com. Have a look, pick out those herbs, see if you can find someone else in your area that does them. Really get those herbs in, every day, and start to strengthen your kidneys. And that will have a knock-on effect on all kinds of things. It will actually help to reduce the overall tension in your body. It will help to make sure that that water you're taking in is actually hydrating, rather than just going straight through you. So those would be 2 really simple things I'd recommend to start with. And then for the Shen energy, I'd say really to begin with, focus on getting clarity. And number 1 and number 2, get real clarity about exactly where you're at, what your situation is. And this isn't just on a practical sense, although I highly recommend that. Be honest with yourself about this, that, and the other. But also do one of those kind of exercises to really know yourself. In fact, ideally do several. Really understand what's important to you, what it is that you prioritize. I love the kind of Tony Robbins kind of stuff, like I think that you do, Matthew, as well. Like it's personal power, or where you really clarify what are my values, what's really important to me, what really drives me. Something like that, really, really, really crucial, because if you don't really know yourself and understand yourself, you're not going to get much further. So I'd say do some kind of exercise like that to really know yourself and to really understand your situation as it is. And then also, number 2, get a really, really compelling vision about exactly where you want to achieve in every area of your life that you're not happy with. So get a compelling vision about what is not just going to be okay, but what is really going to excite you in the area of your health, or in the area of your relationships, or in the area of your true path in life in terms of your contributions to the world, or in the area of your finances, whatever it might be. Get real clarity about exactly what it is you want to achieve. And then from there, when you have those 2, funnily enough, often the strategy of exactly how to get there tends to fall into place anyway. You have amazing synchronicities and a guidance from sources that you may not even be able to anticipate or expect about how to get there. But first of all, just be totally honest where you're at, and then be totally clear about where it is you want to go.
Okay. Perfect.
And I just want to say on that subject, I'm going to give you a link to go underneath this video, Matthew, and I've covered, I've got 3 training videos which basically talk about this in detail, as well as shattering some of the most common health myths which are out there. So all you need to do is follow the link underneath and subscribe to that, and I'll send you that. There'll be 3 more hours roughly of all the same, all completely free, just to really cover it all in a great amount of detail.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, appreciate that. And also, your Easy Exhaustion Cure is a good one as well, because you could only really, in this short interview, you could only really touch on some of the things, and you go deeper into basically some of the action steps that people need to take, right?
Absolutely.
To get the energy up.
I wanted to make it like a complete support system, Exhaustion Cure, but then also easy. So it actually is easy. It's around a 300-page book, and then 8 hours of audio, and then countless bonuses, including free coaching call as well. Anyway, not doing a sales thing, but basically it's all laid out for you. It's what do I need to do, how much do I need to do, when do I need to do it, how long do I need to do it for, what do I need to be cautious about. So it's made kind of idiot proof almost, because that's the only kind of thing that I listen to these days. So that's also the only thing I'm going to create for you. It's just everything is laid out step by step. So at the end, there's schedules, when you should do things, how much, da 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 da. So if you are low on energy, if you're lost, if you really don't know where to begin, and you want like a strategy built for you, there it is.
Okay. Phenomenal. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we finish up?
Yeah, I guess just that at the time of recording this, I'm just about to launch my new website, elwinrobinson.com, and this is really dedicated to health mastery. So for those people who don't just want to feel a little bit better, but who kind of recognize themselves and what we're saying, like, yeah, I actually want real transformation. I want to get things handled for once and for all. I want to get to the root of why I'm ill in the first place. And then not only do I want to transform myself, but I also want to learn how to help other people transform. And so I've created a coaching program which is only going to be open to a very limited amount of people because of how in depth and how kind of how deeply we'll be working together. But yeah, if this really resonates with you, then all you need to do is sign up to the email list, which Matthew's going to give you a link for, and then when it's open and when it's ready, I'll send you a little email about that, and then if you're interested, you can go ahead and apply to do that with me. And if you're interested in a consultation, elwinrobinson.com, exactly the same place, and I'll just do one-off consultations as well. People who want to get some clarity, who want to get a strategy, and then they're happy to just go for it on their own. You know, they don't need any more help. No problem. Happy to facilitate that too.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much, Elwin. It's been a fantastic hour or so we've spent, and great information you shared, real insight, especially into the Eastern perspective of energy, and then the 3 different types of energy and how to achieve practical steps to how to achieve that in our lives. That's phenomenal information that 99.99% of people just don't know about. And now you, the viewer, you've got that information. Take action. Definitely check out the links Elwin has below. More information there on this, and you know, it's taking action on it. That's what's going to get you it. So thank you very much, Elwin. Appreciate it, and thank you very much. My name is Matthew Armstrong, and look forward to chatting to you next time.